John Curtis, familiar face on British TV. He's regarded by many as the UK's leading election forecaster. We have him here right now on CBC News Net. John, let's start first. This is a really close race. What would be your best guess at this point?
Well, the truth is, I think anybody who tries to forecast this referendum now, at least with any degree of certainty, is a bit of a fool. If I simply say to you that we've had 4 polls published this morning, and once you take the don't knows out, their estimates for remaining in the UK range between 49 and 52%. You can see that this is a very close referendum. Now, it has to be said, those numbers are in fact rather better for the Remain side than that were coming from about a dozen polls that were published during the course of last week, which for the first time suggested that there was a real possibility that actually the Remain side could lose. So it may be that there was a dip that's beginning to be recovered, but the truth is that this is certainly looking like a very close referendum. Remain perhaps probably still just the favourites, but only just. And Prime Minister David Cameron is finding himself face a fight which is much tougher and much closer than I think he ever originally envisaged would be the case when he started on this process by promising us a referendum following a renegotiation of the UK's terms of membership.
So what are the undecideds? What's the percentage of undecideds?
Well, inevitably, the percentage of undecideds has been falling. It's now often below 10% in the opinion polls. And increasingly, people are saying, look, I've made my mind up. The truth is, probably if the Leave side are going to win this referendum, it won't simply be a case of trying to convert undecideds, because the truth is, the thing that most undecideds are most likely to do is just simply not go to the polls at all. They're disproportionately the less interested in this referendum. They are probably going to have to persuade people to try and change their minds. The card that above all has been their strongest card, the thing that above all seems to help to persuade people that should want to leave, are concerns about immigration. And as you suggest in your introduction, it may just be a little bit more difficult for the Leave side to play that card in the final few days of this campaign because of the tragic death of a Labour MP who was particularly associated with trying to deal with the plight of Syrian refugees. Now, arguably, that's a different issue from immigration from the European Union, but maybe the Leave side are just going to be a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more careful on this issue than they might otherwise have been.
So what does the Stay side have to do to push above that threshold?
Well, the truth is they really only have one principal argument, one principal trick, although it's potentially a powerful one, and that is the concern that voters may have if we were to leave. For the most part, it's pretty clear that most voters agree that if we were to leave the European Union, the economy would do less well. And many voters are frankly balancing that consideration off against what is also a majority concern, which is that immigration might increase if we remain inside the European Union. So the Remain side have to get to people to focus on that and to hope that their fear of what might happen if Britain were to leave were to be sufficient. And it has to be said, in trying to do that, on occasion, it's pretty clear that the Remain side have been at risk of over-egging the pudding. For example, during the course of last week, Chancellor George Osborne suggested that if Britain were to vote to leave, he'd have to introduce an emergency budget and that taxes would have to go up. What did we discover from the opinion polls? Well, a lot of people just don't believe him. So the Remain side have to be careful. If they push their argument too hard, they are at risk of undermining their credibility.
And just finally, I don't have a lot of time, but how critical is turnout on Thursday then?
Perhaps not as critical as people imagine. At least it's not the level of turnout. What will matter is whether or not those kinds of people who are more likely to vote to leave are more likely to turn up than those who will vote to remain. Certainly the opinion polls suggest that because, for example, it's older voters are more likely to vote, who are more likely to vote to remain, and they're more likely to turn out and vote, that this may leave the Remain side at a disadvantage. But it's whether there are differences in turnout is crucial, not simply the overall level.
Election forecaster John Curtis, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.